I walked into my own living room and found my mother-in-law rearranging my furniture. She looked up, smiled, and said, "Oh good, you're back. We've already moved the guest room stuff into the garage." I stood there in the doorway. My carry-on bag was still slung over my shoulder. I could feel the weight of it, the strap digging in, but I didn't move. Behind Margaret, the room had been transformed. My cream-colored sofa had been pushed against the far wall. In its place sat a beige recliner I'd never seen before, a worn leather ottoman, a floor lamp with a fringed shade. Her quilt, the one with the faded roses, was draped over the back of my chair. The air smelled like her. Potted meat and lavender spray. Mark stepped around me, his bag thumping against his thigh. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Margaret wiped her hands on her jeans. "Well, we figured since you'd be gone for a week, we'd get a head start on settling in." She smiled at him, that motherly smile that always made him soften. "Your father's in the backyard checking the fence." I said nothing. I stepped past her and walked through the house. The guest room had been emptied. My desk, my boxes of books, my grandmother's sewing table, all gone. In their place, a queen bed with a floral comforter. Robert's slippers on the floor. The kitchen cabinets were open. Margaret's dishes in my cabinets, her spice rack on my counter. Robert came in through the back door. He nodded at me. "Claire, good flight?" I looked at him. He was wearing my husband's old gardening gloves. "Where is my grandmother's sewing table?" I asked. "Garage," he said. "We needed the space." I walked to the garage. The sewing table was there, stacked with boxes marked kitchen and bathroom. My books were piled against the wall. The dust was already settling on them. I went back inside. Mark and Margaret were in the kitchen now, their voices low. I heard Mark say, "You should have asked." And Margaret reply, "It's family property, sweetie. What's mine is yours. What's yours is mine." I poured myself a glass of water from the tap. The glass was one of hers. I drank it slowly, watching them. If this story moves you, please subscribe to K6 Karma in the family and hit the bell. Trust me, you'll want to see how this one ends. Margaret turned to me, her face bright. "We sold our house, sweetie. We're here to stay." The words landed like a stone. "Sold it?" Mark said. "Closing's in 2 weeks, Margaret said. "We used the money to pay off some debts. Your father's been wanting to retire properly, and now we can all be together." She looked at me, waiting for me to say something. I smiled. I smiled because I had a recording. I had it saved on my phone in a folder labeled Reci, E-Sips. A voice memo from March 10, 5 days before my wedding. Me and Margaret in the corner of a crowded restaurant, my phone face down on the table, recording every word. She had told Mark's sister, her voice bright and confident, "Once she's married, she'll have to share everything. And the house? Well, it's in the family now. We'll move in after the honeymoon. She won't dare say no to her husband's parents." I heard it. I recorded it. And the next morning, I called Linda Hartwell. I smiled at Margaret now, standing in my kitchen, surrounded by her things, her plan unfolding exactly as she had described it. "Welcome home," I said. She beamed. "I knew you'd understand." I set the glass down. "Where is Mark's emergency key?" "The one he gave you?" She blinked. "We used it to get in. Why?" "No reason," I said. "Just curious." I didn't tell her I had changed the locks the day before the honeymoon. I didn't tell her the old locks were still on the doors looking normal, but the new keys were in my purse. I didn't tell her about the hidden camera in the bookshelf in the living room either. The nanny cam I'd installed on March 13. $80 from an electronics store. It had been recording for 4 days now. I didn't tell her any of that. I just stood there, let her chatter about the curtains she wanted to buy, and watched my husband's face go pale. Margaret smiled and said, "We sold our house, sweetie. We're here to stay." I smiled back and said nothing. I had a recording that would change everything. That evening, after Margaret and Robert had finally stopped unpacking and gone to bed, I sat in my car in the driveway. I needed space to think. Mark was inside, trying to have a conversation with his parents about boundaries, but I knew how that would end. Margaret would smile, change the subject, and Mark would let it slide. I opened my phone and found the folder labeled REC Seats. Inside was a single voice memo, March 10, 2024. 5 days before my wedding, I pressed play and held the phone to my ear. The recording started with the clink of wine glasses. Margaret's voice, sweet as poisoned honey. The house is perfect, Mark. Big enough for all of us. We've already talked to a realtor about listing ours. Mark's voice, hesitant. Mom, Claire and I need our own space. Nonsense. Margaret's tone sharpened. That house is family property. Claire doesn't understand how things work yet. She's young. She'll learn to appreciate having us around. I'll help her with the cooking, the decorating. She won't even notice us. Robert's gruff voice in the background. It's settled then. I heard Mark mumble something, but Margaret cut him off. She's not your family, sweetheart, not really. I raised you. I know what's best. Claire will thank us later. And if she doesn't, well, we'll deal with that. I stopped the recording. My hands were steady. I'd listened to it dozens of times since that night. Each time, the same cold fury settled in my chest. But I'd learned to control it, to channel it into something useful. I called Linda Hartwell the next morning at 8002. She answered on the first ring. Claire? Tell me you're back. Back, and they're already in my house. Margaret and Robert? Both of them. They moved in while we were in Cancun. Guest room is theirs. Living room looks like a thrift store. Linda let out a low whistle. They don't know about the eviction notice? No, they think I'm going to roll over. Good. Keep it that way. The notice was served to the address on March 12th. The 30-day clock started then. You're at day 16 now. Legally, they have until April 11 to vacate. But they think they're staying. And that's their problem. Linda's voice was sharp, professional. You filed the notice before they even moved in. That's key. It's a preemptive eviction based on your intent to reside and their unauthorized entry. They can fight it, but they'll lose. The deed is solely in your name. The mortgage is solely in your name. They have no tenancy rights because they never had permission to enter. I need to know for sure. No surprises. Claire, I've done this for 15 years. Trust me, they have no leg to stand on. The only risk is if you let them stay past the notice period without enforcing it. So don't. Serve the paper, call the sheriff, and let the law do its work. What about the recording? Linda paused. Keep that in your pocket for now. Use it if they try to spin a story to the family. But legally, you don't need it. The deed and the eviction notice are enough. I thanked her and hung up. Then I opened my email and pulled up the eviction notice. A PDF file. Official court document dated March 11. Signed by Linda. Filed with the county clerk. Cost me $150 to file. I'd paid it from my own checking account, transferred the money 3 days before the wedding. Mark had no idea. I printed 2 copies and put them in a manila envelope. Sealed it. Wrote eviction notice on the front in black marker. Then I slid the envelope into my safe behind a stack of old tax returns. The hidden camera was already recording. I'd bought it on March 13, the day before we left for Cancun. A small black box that looked like a bookend. I placed it on the living room bookshelf, aimed at the couch and the dining table. The feed streamed to my phone. The microphone picked up everything. That afternoon, I sat on the back porch and watched the live feed. Margaret was in the kitchen, opening cabinets. She pulled out my pots and pans, inspected them, and stacked them on the counter. Then she opened the pantry and started pulling out my spices. Robert, where did I put my spice rack? Don't know. Robert was in the living room watching TV in his recliner. These are all wrong. I need my own. I told you to pack it. I watched her shove my spice bottles into a cardboard box and write, "Garage" on the side in permanent marker. Then she opened my cabinet of baking supplies. My grandmother's mixing bowls, my measuring cups, my stand mixer. All of it went into boxes. All of it went to the garage. I didn't flinch. I didn't call Mark. I didn't go inside. I watched the camera feed on my phone as Margaret rearranged my kitchen cabinets. She had no idea I was documenting every move. The dinner invitation came from Mark, not from me. 3 days after we returned, he walked into the bedroom while I was getting dressed. Hey, my parents want to have everyone over tonight. A sort of welcome home dinner. I paused with my shirt half buttoned. Everyone? My brother and Sarah, the kids, just a family thing. I nodded slowly. I had been waiting for this. 3 days. That's how long I let them settle. 3 days of watching Margaret rearrange my kitchen through the camera feed. 3 days of seeing my grandmother's mixing bowls stacked in the garage. 3 days of smiling and saying nothing while Robert ate dinner in his recliner, watching sports highlights on my television. 3 days of gathering evidence. I had the recording. I had the eviction notice. I had the deed. Now I needed an audience. I think that would be lovely, I said. Mark smiled, relieved. Great, Mom's already planning the menu. Of course she was. The kitchen filled with smells by late afternoon. Margaret made her famous pot roast. Robert set up folding chairs in the living room. Mark's brother David arrived at 5:30 with his wife Sarah and their 2 kids. Sarah hugged me at the door, and I felt her hold on a beat too long. Are you okay? She whispered. I smiled. Never better. She looked like she wanted to say more, but Margaret's voice cut through from the kitchen. Sarah, can you come set the table? The good dishes are in the cabinet above the sink. Sarah gave me one last look and went. We sat down to eat at 6. Margaret had arranged the seating. She sat at the head of the table with Robert at the other end. Mark and I were on the sides, like guests. David and Sarah across from us, the kids squished between them on the bench. Margaret lifted her glass. I just want to say a few words. It groaned. Mom. Hush. She smiled, but it was sharp. I just want to say how grateful we are to be here. Robert and I have been dreaming about this for months. Selling our house, starting fresh, being close to family. Sarah's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. David looked at Mark. You guys knew about this? Mark shifted in his chair. I mean, they told me they were thinking about downsizing. We already did it, Margaret said, bright and sweet. We closed on the sale. Well, we're closing in 2 weeks. But we moved our things here. It just made sense. Since we're going to be living together now. David stared at her. Living together? Permanently, Margaret said. This house is plenty big enough for all of us. She turned to me. Isn't that right, Claire? I didn't answer. I didn't even blink. Sarah was looking at me now, her face pale. David had put down his fork. The kids were oblivious, eating their mashed potatoes. Mark looked between his mother and me, his confusion turning to something darker. Mom, he said slowly, we never talked about permanent. Sweetie, of course we did. Margaret waved a hand. At the wedding dinner, I told you it was the plan. You told me you were thinking about it, and I thought about it, and we decided. I let the silence sit. Then I pushed my chair back. Excuse me, I said, calm as glass. I walked out of the dining room, through the living room, past Robert's recliner, past Margaret's quilt on my chair, down the hallway to the master bedroom where I kept my safe in the back of the closet. I spun the combination. I pulled out the manila envelope. The word I had written on it months ago in black Sharpie. Eviction notice. I walked back to the dining room. Everyone was still. Margaret had a forkful of pot roast midway to her mouth. Mark was half standing. Sarah was gripping her napkin. I placed the envelope flat on the table in front of Margaret. You have 30 days, I said, but I'd prefer you leave tonight. Margaret's smile froze. Doke! I walked back to the dining room, the envelope in my hand feeling exactly as heavy as it should. Margaret's fork hung in the air. The pot roast on it trembled slightly. I set the envelope down flat on the table in front of her. You have 30 days, I said, but I'd prefer you leave tonight. Her smile didn't just freeze, it cracked at the edges. Mark's chair scraped the floor as he stood fully. There, what is that? An eviction notice, I said. Filed March 11th. Served to this address on March 12th. The silence lasted 4 seconds. Margaret let out a breathy laugh, the kind that was supposed to make me feel small. Oh, sweetie, you can't evict us. Mark, tell her. It is ridiculous. Mark's face had gone pale. Mom, what did you do? We moved in, she said, like it was obvious. We sold our house. Your father and I are staying here. That was the plan. What plan? Mark's voice cracked. The one you agreed to at the wedding dinner, she said. No, Mark said slowly. You asked if we'd ever thought about you living with us. I said we'd think about it. That's not agreeing. Margaret waved her hand. Semantics. Claire, put that envelope away. You're embarrassing yourself. I didn't move. Robert cleared his throat from the end of the table. Margaret, maybe we should. No, she snapped. Then she turned to me, her voice dropping to something cold and sweet. Claire, dear, this house belongs to Mark too. You're married. What's his is yours, and what's yours is his. That's how marriage works. Is it? I said. It is, she said firmly. So this little piece of paper means nothing. Mark can override it. Mark, tell her. Mark looked at me. I saw the question in his eyes. The doubt. I opened my purse and pulled out a second piece of paper. This one wasn't an eviction notice. It was a deed. Signed and notarized on February 15th, 2023. Sole owner listed, Claire Mitchell. I set it on top of the envelope. This house is in my name, I said, purchased with my inheritance from my grandmother. $120,000. Plus a mortgage that I signed for, alone. Mark's name is on nothing. Margaret's face went still. Mark doesn't own this house, I continued. He never did. He lives here because I married him and I wanted him here. That's a privilege, not a right. Claire? Mark said quietly. I couldn't read his tone. Did you know about this? Margaret demanded, pointing at him. Did you know she was keeping the house from you? Mark shook his head. No, I never asked. I assumed we'd add my name after the wedding. We didn't, I said, because you never asked, and because your mother had already told me her plan. I reached into my purse again. My phone. I pulled up the voice memos folder, the one labeled RECEC. I pressed play. Margaret's voice filled the dining room, tinny and clear from the recording I'd made 5 days before my wedding. Claire's a sweet girl, but she's not family. Not really. Once they're married, she'll settle in. We'll move in after the honeymoon. She won't argue. We'll handle her. The table went dead silent. I let the recording play for another 30 seconds. Her voice, so casual, discussing which furniture to keep, which to throw out. My grandmother's sewing table. Put it in the garage. She won't notice. When it ended, I put the phone back in my purse. Margaret was white. Her hands were shaking. That's taken out of context. You recorded me? I did, I said. And context wouldn't help you. Mark sat down. He put his head in his hands. Mark, Margaret said, her voice pleading now. She's lying. We would never. Mom, Mark's voice came out low. I heard you. Yippee, but I'm your mother. He looked up at me. His eyes were red, but his jaw was set. Claire, he said, what do you need from me? I wanted to feel something. Relief, satisfaction. But there wasn't time. I need you to not override this eviction, I said. That's all. He nodded once. Margaret saw it. She saw him choose. And something in her broke. You ungrateful little... She stood up, her chair scraping the floor. We sold our house for this. We put our money into... My house, I said. Your house was sold without my knowledge or consent. And the closing is in 2 weeks. That's your problem, not mine. You can't do this, she hissed. This is family. Family doesn't move into someone's home while they're on their honeymoon, I said. Family doesn't pack up a grandmother's sewing table and put it in the garage. She lunged for the deed. I pulled it back. I'm calling the police, I said. You wouldn't. Robert, I said, turning to him. Your wife needs to calm down. Robert looked at Margaret, looked at me, looked at the envelope on the table. He stood up slowly. Margaret, he said, we should go. We live by the Austin Police Department building. 12 minutes from the time I made the call to the time the cruiser pulled into my driveway. 2 officers, 1 man, 1 woman. Calm, professional faces. Margaret refused to leave the dining room. Hall refused to move. She sat in my chair at my table and folded her arms like a child. The female officer kneeled beside her. "Ma'am, you need to vacate the premises." "This is my son's house," Margaret said. "It's not," I said. I handed the officer the deed. She looked at it, nodded. "Ma'am," she said, standing up, "your daughter-in-law has a legal eviction notice and sole ownership of this property. You have 30 days to leave, but she has requested you leave tonight. If you refuse, we will escort you out." Margaret's eyes met mine. I didn't blink. "Get your things," I said. "The recliner, the lamp, the quilt, the boxes, everything. Take it tonight, or I'll have it put on the curb tomorrow." She looked at Mark. "I guess you don't love your parents," she whispered. Mark looked back at her. 15 seconds, then 20. "I love my wife," he said. "She's the one who married me, not you." Margaret's face crumpled. Robert took her arm. "Come on," she went. The police stood at the door as the furniture went out. The beige recliner, the fringed lamp, boxes from the guest room, boxes from the kitchen. I watched from the doorway, arms folded, the recording still in my pocket. Margaret loaded the last box into her car. She turned to look at me. "You'll pay for this," she said. "Ma'am," the officer said, "I'd leave now if I were you." Margaret got in the car. The cruiser stayed until they were gone. I closed my front door, leaned against it. The living room was empty. The house smelled like their stale perfume. Mark stood in the hallway, staring at the floor. "Claire," he said, "I'm sorry." "I know," I said. "I didn't know." "Ingley." "But you could have told me." I looked at him. "Would you have believed me?" He thought about it. 10 seconds. 15. "Probably not," he said quietly. "Exactly." We stood there, 2 feet apart, the whole house quiet. "Where do we go from here?" he asked. I walked past him to the bookshelf, retrieved the hidden camera, small, black, discreet. "I have recordings," I said. "Your mother on March 10th. The living room for the past 3 days. And I'm going to send them to David and Sarah tonight." Mark's face went gray. "Claire." "They deserve to know what their mother planned," I said, "before she drags them into a place to stay." He didn't argue. I sent the file at 9:52 that night. A text to David, a text to Sarah, the hotel with a Days Inn off Interstate 35. Beige walls, stained carpet, a vending machine that hummed in the hallway. Margaret had called me 6 times since the police left. I let every call go to voicemail. The 7th time, I answered. "Claire, we need to talk about this like adults," she said. Her voice was sweet again, the fake sweet, the one she used when she wanted something. "We don't," I said. "Mark's father has a heart condition." "Why, man?" "The stress." "Then you should find somewhere stable to live." I hung up. Mark watched me from the kitchen doorway. He hadn't slept. His eyes were red. "She's going to keep calling," he said. "No." I pulled up my phone, opened the recording from March 10th, the one where Margaret laid out her entire plan in perfect detail. I trimmed it, just her voice. No preamble, no context, just the moment she said the words. "I'm sending this to David and Sarah," I said. Mark's hand went to his mouth. "Claire, that's their mother." "Exactly." I attached the file. A text to David. "You should hear what your mother planned before our wedding. I have more if you want it." A text to Sarah. "Listen to this. Then decide who you believe." I hit send. 9:52 p.m. Mark sat down at the kitchen table, put his head in his hands. "She's going to lose it." "She already lost it," I said. "She just doesn't know yet." The first reply came at 10:04 p.m. "David, is this real?" I typed back. "March 10, 5 days before my wedding." Recorded on my phone. "David, I can't believe she said that." I didn't reply. Sarah's text came at 10:01 p.m. Longer. Typed in pieces. I always knew she was controlling. But this is something else. "Claire, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was going to move in." I typed. She sold her house without telling me. Sarah, she told us you offered. I stared at the screen. Of course she did. Of course, Margaret had rewritten the story before I even got back from Cancun. I didn't offer, I typed. She took. Sarah, we're coming over tomorrow. I want to see you. I thought about it. The house was clean now. Margaret's recliner was gone. The quilt was folded in a trash bag by the garage door. The police had made sure of that. Okay, I typed. Oh. The phone rang at 10:28 p.m. Mark's father. Robert, I answered. Yes. Claire. His voice was low, gruff, the same 3 words he always used. This is too far. This is too far, I repeated. Robert, I have a recording of your wife saying she was going to push me out of my own house. I have camera footage of her unpacking my kitchen. I have an eviction notice you both ignored. And you're telling me this is too far? Silence. We made a mistake, he said. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk, I said. This was a plan. You both knew exactly what you were doing. Another silence. The house closes in 12 days, he said. We don't have anywhere to go. I didn't say anything. Claire, we don't have anywhere to go. I know, I said. I've known for 3 months. I hung up. Mark hadn't moved from the table. What did he say? He wanted me to feel sorry for them. I looked at him. No, the next morning my phone was full of messages. David had forwarded the recording to Mark's sister, Emily. Emily had forwarded it to her husband. Someone had sent it to their cousin in Houston. By 10 a.m., the recording had spread through the entire Mitchell family like a slow bleed. I sat on my couch, my living room, and I watched the fragments arrive. Emily, Mom told us you invited them. She said you needed help with the mortgage. David, she said the guest room was always meant for them. Sarah, she said you were grateful. I typed one reply. To all of them, she said. The recording has no, she said. It has her voice. Listen again. The reply stopped. At noon, Sarah arrived alone. No, David, no kids. She stood at my front door with a bakery box and wet eyes. I brought croissants, she said. I let her in. She sat on my couch, looked around at the empty spaces where Margaret's furniture had been. I can't believe she did this to you. She did it to herself, I said. Sarah picked at the edge of the bakery box. David is furious. Emily is crying. My mother-in-law called me to ask if the story was true. She looked at me. The whole family knows Claire. Everyone. I poured her a cup of coffee. Good. That's cold. It's honest. She laughed. A sad, hollow laugh. You're not going to forgive her, are you? No. She's Mark's mother. And I'm Mark's wife, I said. One of us planned to bully the other out of her own home. The other one prepared for it legally. Who sounds like the villain? Sarah didn't answer. She didn't have to. She stayed for an hour. We didn't talk about Margaret again. We talked about her kids, about work, about normal things. Normal, boring, safe things. When she left, she hugged me. You did the right thing, she said. I'm sorry it took me 2 days to see it. It took you 2 days, I said. It took Mark 3 years. She nodded, got in her car, drove away. I closed the door, looked at my phone. 6 missed calls from unknown numbers. 4 voicemails from people I'd never met. Cousins, aunts, family friends, all of them wanting to know if the story was true. I deleted them all without listening. Margaret had spent 30 years building her reputation. The matriarch, the generous one, the one who always knew what was best for everyone. I spent 30 seconds sending a voice memo, and that was it. That was all it took. The hotel was a days in off Interstate 35. I knew because Robert called Mark at 10:28 that night, and Mark put him on speaker. We can't stay here, Robert said. It's $80 a night. We have 12 days until closing. Mark looked at me. I said nothing. Can we come back? Robert asked. Just until the house closes. We'll be out by April 5th. No, I said, not loud, not angry, just the word, flat and final. Mark repeated it. No, Dad, you can't, Robert hung up. I expected them to fight the eviction. Margaret had never lost an argument in her life. She'd cried her way through decades of family disputes, weaponized tears and guilt until everyone gave in. She tried the same strategy with the court. The hearing was April 10th. I sat next to Linda in the county courthouse wearing a gray blazer and no jewelry. Margaret and Robert stood across the aisle with a lawyer they'd found on Google. His suit was too big. His tie was crooked. Margaret turned and looked at me. Her eyes were red. Her lip trembled. She wanted me to feel sorry for her. I didn't blink. The judge called the case. Margaret's lawyer argued that the eviction was invalid because the property was a family home. He said my actions were cruel. He said Margaret had nowhere to go because her own house had already closed. The judge looked at the deed. Looked at the eviction notice. Looked at the recording transcript Linda had submitted as evidence. Mrs. Mitchell, the judge said to Margaret, did you have written permission from the homeowner to occupy the residence? Margaret opened her mouth, closed it. Your client never responded to the eviction notice, Linda said. She ignored a legal document for 30 days. The judge ruled in my favor. Eviction upheld. Margaret and Robert had 72 hours to vacate the hotel room they were currently in, though that wasn't part of the order. It was just where they happened to be. I walked out of the courthouse without looking back. The closing on their house went through April 5th, same as scheduled. They got their $180,000. I later learned, through Mark, that it all went to debts. Credit cards. A loan on a truck Robert had bought 2 years ago. The retirement savings they'd drained to pay for what they called helping the kids, but was really just propping up their own spending. They didn't buy another house. They couldn't afford one. They rented a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex off South Lamar. 1 bedroom, technically. The second was an office with a closet they called a guest room. Carpet stained, kitchen counters cracked. The kind of place Margaret would have described as charming when she lived in her own home and visited other people's. She didn't call it charming now. She called it a tragedy. Word spread through the family. David and Sarah told their church group. Emily told her coworkers. Margaret's sisters heard the recording third hand. One of them called me Liz, Margaret's younger sister. I'd met her twice. I heard what she did, Liz said. I'm not surprised. Goodbye, Liz, I said. Mark and I started therapy the second week of April. He sat on the couch in a therapist's office, hands pressed between his knees, and said the hardest sentence I'd ever heard him say. I didn't protect you. You were raised to protect her, I said. Will that matter? No, I said, but it explains it. The therapist asked what we wanted. Mark said he wanted to understand why he'd frozen. I said I wanted to sell the house. The house? Mark said. The house, I said. It's full of her. Her fingerprints are on every surface. She unpacked my kitchen. She slept in my guest room. She planned to take it from me. I don't want to live there anymore. Mark didn't argue. He didn't hesitate. He just nodded. We listed it May 1st. It sold in 3 weeks to a young couple with a baby. They paid $310,000. I made a profit, even after the mortgage and closing costs. We closed on a new house, June 1st, 320. A 3-bedroom on the north side of Austin, quiet street, big oak in the front yard. No one else's furniture, no one else's dishes. No one else's plan. I never spoke to Margaret again. Mark calls his father once a month. Short conversations. Weather. Work. Nothing about the house. Nothing about the past. At night, sometimes, I sit on my porch and watch the oak tree sway in the wind. I think about how close I came to losing everything. How easily I could have been the villain in someone else's story, the cruel daughter-in-law who threw elderly parents onto the street. But that's not what happened. I'm not the villain. I'm the one who held the deed and used it, and I will never apologize for that. The morning after the court hearing, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a cup of coffee going cold beside me. The house felt foreign now. Every room carried the ghost of Margaret's rearranging, the echo of Robert's footsteps, the scent of their furniture polish. I couldn't walk past the guest room without seeing that floral comforter, those slippers by the bed. I couldn't open a cabinet without half expecting to find Margaret's spice rack. Mark came downstairs at 7:30. He stopped in the doorway and looked at me. "You're up early," he said. "I couldn't sleep." He nodded. He hadn't slept well either. I could tell by the shadows under his eyes, the way he kept rubbing his jaw like he was trying to massage away a knot that wouldn't loosen. "I've been thinking," I said. "I want to sell this house." He didn't argue. He didn't ask why. He just sat down across from me and said, "Okay." That was the moment I knew our marriage would survive. Not because he agreed with me, but because he stopped trying to fix everything and started listening. We listed the house on May 1st, a Tuesday. Our realtor, a woman named Patricia with silver earrings and a practical handshake, priced it at $310,000. I'd paid $280. The market had moved in my favor. It sold in 3 weeks, a young couple with a baby on the way. They walked through the living room and the wife touched the kitchen counter and said, "I can see us here." I felt a strange relief. The house would be loved again by someone who hadn't fought a war inside its walls. The closing took 45 minutes. I signed papers. Mark signed papers. We walked out with a check and the weight of the past year sliding off my shoulders. We closed on the new house on June 1st. A 3-bedroom on the north side of Austin. Quiet street. Big oak in the front yard with branches that stretched over the driveway like arms reaching for the sky. The kitchen had white cabinets and a window above the sink that faced the backyard. No one had ever rearranged those cabinets. No one had ever unpacked their dishes into those drawers. We moved in ourselves. No family, no friends with trucks. Just the two of us and a rented U-Haul and boxes we packed ourselves. I put my grandmother's sewing table in the living room. I set my mixing bowls in the kitchen cabinet above the stove. I hung my own photos on the walls. Margaret and Robert were not invited. I never sent them an address. I never called. I never answered a text. The last message I received from Margaret was 2 words. "This isn't over." I deleted it without replying. We started therapy in the 2nd week of April. A marriage counselor named Dr. Reyes, who had kind eyes and a way of letting silences sit without rushing to fill them. Mark talked about guilt, about feeling torn, about the years of being the peacekeeper in a family that never learned to hold peace. I talked about the recording, about the camera, about the night I sat in my car and listened to Margaret's voice say, "She'll fall in line once she realizes how things work." Dr. Reyes asked me, eventually, if I had any regrets. "No," I said. "I regret that it had to happen. I don't regret how I handled it." She nodded. "That's not the same thing." "No," I said. "It isn't. Mark calls his father once a month now. Short conversations. Weather. Work. Robert asks about the new house. Mark says it's fine and changes the subject. He never mentions the address. Never offers an invitation. Margaret doesn't call. I hear through Sarah occasionally that Margaret and Robert are still in that 2-bedroom off South Lamar. The one with the stained carpet and the cracked kitchen counters. Their house closing gave them $180,000, but most of it went to credit card debt, a truck loan, and what little retirement savings they had left. They're not comfortable. They're not thriving. They're just surviving in a space that will never feel like theirs because nothing will. The rest of the family knows the truth. Sarah and David heard the recording. Emily heard it. Liz, Margaret's younger sister, called me once and said she was sorry. She said she'd always known Margaret could be manipulative, but never thought she'd go this far. I thanked her. I said I appreciated it. I didn't say anything else. Some nights, I sit on my front porch and watch the oak tree sway in the wind. The leaves catch the streetlight and shimmer. It's quiet here. No one's furniture but mine. No one's plan but mine. I think about what I learned. That standing your ground with legal preparation isn't cruelty. It's self-respect. That entitlement doesn't override ownership. That sometimes the hardest battles are with family, but the victory is worth the cost. I don't hate Margaret anymore. Hatred takes energy I don't have. But I don't forgive her either. Forgiveness is earned, and some bridges, once burned, stay ash forever. I look at the oak tree. I listened to the leaves, and I know I did the right thing. Not the easy thing, right thing. If this story hit close to home, please like and subscribe. I'll be back next week with another one.